Ambassador, I welcome you here in Munich, and we are very glad that you come to the Munich International Press Club. I would have said some words before, but we are short in time, so I ask you to give us a short statement, and then we immediately begin with the questions.
Fantastic.
Yeah, fine.
Peter, vielen Dank für Ihre freundlichen Worte der Einführung und für die Ausrichtung der Pressekonferenz in diesen wunderbaren Räumlichkeiten des Münchner Presseclubs mit Blick auf den Marienplatz und das Rathaus. Ihre renommierte Institution kann auf eine 63-jährige Geschichte zurückblicken und ist ein verlässlicher Partner des US-Generalkonsulats hier in München. Unser Generalkonsul Bill Miller ist mit uns heute. Bill.
He has been here too on this
Ja, ich habe gehört. Wir danken Ihnen für die gute Zusammenarbeit. Ich möchte zunächst eine kurze Ankündigung machen und beantworte im Anschluss daran gerne Ihre Fragen. Almost exactly 1 month ago, I announced that my family and I will return to the United States at the beginning of July. I'm very happy to say my wife Tammy's here. Tammy, just come on, make sure everyone knows this is meine Frau, Tammy Murphy. Since that announcement a month ago, we have traveled around Germany to say goodbye and thank you to friends. Old friends and new friends, young and old, that we have made in our time. Munich is the last stop. By the way, this is my 46th official visit to Bayern as the U.S. Ambassador. Next week we will celebrate one last 4th of July at the embassy in Berlin, make a few last farewells, and then we'll head back to our home in New Jersey. Serving as ambassador of my country to Germany, one of America's strongest partners, has been in every sense of the word the job of a lifetime for me. 2 weeks ago, President Barack Obama nominated my successor, John Emerson, from Los Angeles, California. That nomination has now been sent to the Senate. I know John. Tammy and I know John and his wife Kimberly and their daughters. He will do a fantastic job, especially since he will have the support of one of the greatest teams in the world to count on. I have nothing but praise for my colleagues both at the embassy in Berlin and of course in our consulates. And here in Munich, as I've already mentioned, Consul General Bill Mueller and his colleagues, Leila Onis is right in front of us here with him, are very creative about finding windows of opportunity to engage with all segments of German society. They are the best of the best. The past month has been indeed very busy. Last week we had a very successful presidential visit to Berlin. President Barack Obama had excellent discussions with Chancellor Merkel and President Gauck, and also with SPD Spitzencandidate Peer Steinbrück. A day before arriving in Berlin, President Obama, European Commission President Barroso, European Council President Van Rompuy, and Prime Minister David Cameron announced that negotiations on a comprehensive transatlantic trade and investment partnership will begin on July 8th in Washington. This is very good news. The TTIP, which is what it's called, is a high priority issue for the Obama administration for a whole range of reasons. Over the past month, and in particular over the past week, there have been many commemorations of the 50th anniversary of another U.S. presidential visit to Germany. The fact that the legacy of President John F. Kennedy continues to mean so much to Germans is for me an example of the strong connections between our two countries. Es gibt ein Lied von Marlene Dietrich, in dem sie darüber singt, dass sie noch einen Koffer in Berlin hat. In jeder Hinsicht wird die Familie Murphy immer einen Koffer in Berlin, München, Frankfurt, Düsseldorf, Hamburg und Leipzig haben und an allen anderen Orten, die das Zwischenliegen. Ich danke Ihnen für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit und ich freue mich jetzt auf Ihre Fragen und Anmerkungen. Dankeschön.
Vielen Dank, Botschafter. Thank you very much. So, the ambassador must leave in about 20-25 minutes, so we use the rest of the time for short questions, please.
I will talk fast.
Who will be the first?
Next. I am very happy also to speak about football, if you'd like. Thomas, help me out. Okay. I would just, that certainly begs a response. I appreciate your perspective. I read some interesting things today. In particular, two things. One is President Obama remarked on this from Africa yesterday. And I think his words speak for themselves regarding what we were willing or not willing to do vis-a-vis Mr. Snowden. And again, I won't, the President said it much more eloquently than I. And also, I read something by my friend Roger Cohen today, which was very consistent with part of your comment, which is this got a debate going. And I would only say, from a very personal standpoint, there's a way to get a debate going and there's a way not to get a debate going. And I personally, and again, everyone in our system is innocent until proven guilty, so I don't know the facts. But there's a way to get that debate and there's a way not to get that debate. And I, based on what I know, I would have hoped that we could have started that debate otherwise. President Obama gave, I think, a very seminal speech about 5 weeks ago. And the notion was that we need to recognize that we can't be on a war footing forever. At the same time, recognizing, obviously, that there were security risks that were real. And he talked very explicitly about going to a different place on topics much like these. On Guantanamo Bay and getting it closed. He talked about drones. He talked about how we sort of carry ourselves. And so I think that that was a very good starting place for a debate. I don't think we didn't need Mr. Snowden to do what he did to get a debate going. I hope you're right. I don't know you're right. But I hope you're right that this isn't going to endanger people, that it won't make people less safe as opposed to more safe. I hope that's true. Time will tell. A good question. You won't be surprised. It's not the first time I've heard it in the past hour. People talk about this all the time. And my broad reaction and broad answer is to not worry. And this is the way I think of the world in which we live right now, in America and in Germany, you know, any free society. And there are two levers that we have a hold of, that we balance and try to measure and get right every day. One is a deep-seated obsession, reverence for personal privacy and civil liberties. In our case, ensconced in our Bill of Rights. We care deeply and passionately about our civil liberties, about our privacy. Over here. Over here, the safety and security of our citizens. When you go to become an ambassador, for instance, and you say, as I did, because I've never done this before, what's my number one, how do I rank my responsibilities? Number one is the safety and security of American citizens in the host country. For President Obama, it's safety and security of American citizens, period, everywhere. And by the way, if you add anything to that, it is in fact safety and security as well of those citizens of our allies. And you would never want to have one without the other. You can't have one without the other. But you also would never want to denigrate one at the expense of the other. So you're in this incredibly challenging balancing mode, particularly and clearly after 9/11. Where you struggle every day to get this right, where you feel like, on the one hand, you can stand up and say, listen, we achieved our highest principles, our loftiest goals, and we also kept our citizens safe. And that's the objective that we wake up, and I don't mean we, just the United States, that all of us wake up, beginning with our leaders in free and open societies. That's the objective that we strive for every day. And it's not easy. And we mostly get it right. We're not perfect, but we mostly get it right. That's what I would say.
Bitte.
Jens, not a Bavarian local radius.
Hello, Jens.
Bavarian local radius.
I said Grüße, Jens. In terms of the Munich elections with Washington, although we monitor that very closely, we do speak and monitor that very closely within our mission. I'll come back to that if I may. One of the lessons you'll learn quickly in looking at the German-American relationship is that both Republican and Democratic, I can see you back there, I know you're there, Jens, that both with Republican and Democratic presidents in our country and with CDU, CSU, or SPD chancellors in this country, we find a way to further and deepen our relationship. And so the president last week, as an example, wanted to be sure and was very careful to make sure that he had a balanced visit. He spent a significant amount of time with Chancellor Merkel, but he also spent a meaningful amount of time with the Bundespresident, with vielen Dank. I lost my voice, I apologize. He also spent a significant amount of time with Pierre Steinbrück. He was introduced in his speech by both the Chancellor and Regierende Bürgermeister Klaus Wowereit. So we have complete and supreme confidence that we will. I'll give you an example of my own case. I was honored yesterday in farewell events in Berlin to spend meaningful time with both Chancellor Kohl and Chancellor Schröder. And so this is not just something that we talk about, we live this. We find a way. The relationship with Germany is indispensable. It transcends any individual or political party. Back to Bayern. This is, in many respects, certainly economically, in many respects culturally, diplomatically, and for our military, one of the most important states, locations that we have in Europe, not just in Germany. So our engagement with the government here runs very deep, not just at the lender level, but at the city level. So for instance, we just came down from Nuremberg this morning. We spent a meaningful amount of time with the Oberbürgermeister. We just had a lunch with several members of the government here. I'll see the Minister President next week in Berlin. We care deeply. This is an incredibly important state for us. And again, regardless of what the coalition is, the winners or the losers, our roots in Bayern are so deep and last so long. I am completely optimistic that we will enjoy in the future as good and as great a working relationship as we have in the past. No, not really involved deeply. The most important thing on 9/11, where's Tammy? The most important thing on 9/11 is that Tammy helped us get, quite striking by the way, you should come see it in Berlin, a piece of the building as a memorial in our courtyard in the embassy in Berlin. First of all, a handful of Germans tragically died that day. And we try to invite their survivors' immediate family every year to whatever small memorial we have, whether it be in Berlin or elsewhere in the mission. Secondly, in fact, I think in 2 weeks, Tammy and I and our children are going to visit with Daniel Liebeskind the memorial in New York, I believe in 2 weeks. And that'll be our first visit to the memorial in New York City. And thirdly, I wasn't here on 9/11, but everyone tells me, both those who were here in our mission, as well as I hear this from Germans all the time, and I've seen little examples of this in my time here. If you want to know how close the relationship is between Germany and America, is test it, look at it when one of us is really down in our luck. Post 9/11, the outpouring of support from Germans was overwhelming. The Boston Marathon bombing, the tragic tornadoes in Oklahoma, the horrible shootings in Newtown, Connecticut. Those all happened within the past 8 months in my time as ambassador, the outpouring is extraordinary. So when we say we have no better ally than Germany, it's not just the government that we talk about, it's the depth of the relationship between our peoples. You say Long Island?
Long Island, yeah.
Mets or Yankees?
Yankees. All that.
Just checking.
Noch eine Frage, another question? So I have a last question. When you will be back in some days in the States and friends will ask you, Phil, tell us, what happens in this old world? Europe is suffering, Germany is stronger than ever before, economically stronger than ever before. What happens in this old world?
Oh my goodness, this is hardly an old world. This is a, you have the beauty, looking outside our window and you look at the Rathaus and you say, wow, there's no building in America. When was this built, do we know?
1908.
More than 120 years ago.
Okay, so that wouldn't be true. But there aren't many buildings in America anywhere that are standing, that are as old as that building. I mean, the history is obviously, and culture is extraordinary. And we love it so much we bought a home in Berlin to have for the future. But I would point to a couple of things when people ask me about Europe. And obviously Germany I know the best. I'd say one, economically, Germany has held on to its manufacturing base. It still employs over 25% of its workforce employment in manufacturing. And that's an enormously impressive achievement. And you don't do that by being old world. You do that by innovating, being cutting edge. So I think we have a lot to learn from Germany in that respect. Insbesondere, an example that the president uses, the duale Ausbildung system, which is so meaningful to the success of the Mittelstand. And so I'd say that would be number one. Number two, the United States is the largest economy in the world. The European Union is the largest economic bloc in the world. This notion that I mentioned in my remarks about the potential for transatlantic trade and investment partnership is really big. To think about those two blocks put together in sort of one set of standards and regulations has enormous appeal, with enormous upside, real upside in terms of jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. And I'd say thirdly, it may take longer than we would like it to take. It may be more frustrating, there may be risks, but both the European economy and the US economy will get back on their feet. The US economy is showing real signs of that right now. We've got our challenges, but we clearly are getting ourselves back up on our feet. Europe, it may take longer. Again, there may be more risks. It will be worth it, and I'm optimistic it will get there. And that's good news for not just Europeans, that's good news for Americans. This is not a zero-sum game. When Europe does well, we do better. When the US does well, Europe does better. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it always will be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, for being our guest, and all the best to you and to your wife, wherever you will be in the States.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very
I really
much.
appreciate you
and I
hosting me.
hope you will come back once.